Right, hello everyone. I'm going to cover today kind of what I've been working on with both the backend and now the front end code. Here's the backend. So what I've been working on is mainly just getting a simple UI up so I can actually test this thing out instead of just looking at text all day. I made decent progress. Unfortunately, I got kind of sick on Friday, so it kind of slowed me down a bit. I was hoping to get player movement working. That didn't end up happening, but I did make significant progress, especially considering I just checked and I started this project 11 days ago, and I've already got pretty decent amount of stuff accomplished, so I'm pretty happy with my timeline so far. Yeah, so without further ado, let's take a look where we're at. So as I mentioned in the last video, I was looking at using, was it Phaser? Is that the name of the engine? Yeah, Phaser. So I'm using Phaser3. There's a ton of really good examples out there on how to do certain things. I just took the default template for TypeScript and got it kind of up and running. And well, I'll just show what I did first, and then we can discuss how it all works. So this is my super duper simple menu, and I will zoom in here a bit. Boop, boop, boop. Cool, that only modifies that, so now the text is really good. So the first step would be someone basically creating a group, which it sends across the events, gets the response back, gives us a group ID. All that looks fine. Actually, make this a little bit bigger. Zoom in one more time. And then they would select their characters. In this case, I'm selecting the character, and then I'm also locking it in the same kind of click event. So they lock all three, and then they hit enter queue, and then they're entered into the queue. Oh no. All right, I had a dead client in there. So one bug that I just found is that if you enter queue and then you quit, you stay in the queue. So I need to fix that. But let's take a step back. Let's do that again. So this time we're going to start 2. Move that over there. Make it a little bit smaller because it doesn't need to be that big. Open up the console. So again, we create the group, select our characters, enter the queue. This character is now entered, and then someone else has to come along and then also enter the queue. So they're going to create their group, and then they do, and then it basically sends the response of, hey, we just started the world. Here's your session ID. So if you get disconnected, we could look up that session ID and reconnect the player afterwards, as well as sending over the team IDs, the character IDs for each one, player IDs, etc. And then the spawn points, which are, I'll show in a minute here, but they're selected based off the attributes of a tile. One kind of cardinal sin that I'm doing here is that I'm sending both teams' spawn positions, so I'll break that out, but you shouldn't see the other team's spawn points, basically, although they're going to be hard-coded, so it's not that huge of a deal, but just to keep things as simple as possible and not share any more detail than we need to, that's what I'm going to do. So you might be wondering, well, what the heck is this? All this stuff? So if we go to the, this is not the right browser. See my personal stuff. If we check out Cloudspire again, Cloudspire, Atlas Reactor map. Zoom in. Oh, it's already wicked huge. So this is what it looked like, and then this is the top-down view of it. So you might see some similarities here, where we have all the power-ups, the stealth, the walls, the fences, the not so much walls, but stuff you can't really enter into, so it's not walkable, but it is, surrounded by fences. And then all the power-ups and stuff. And then the spawn points are usually I think these 4 cells, or maybe 6 cells, I forget which ones, but so that's pretty much what I copied over and what it looks like in code. And I'm actually curious if this is going to work. The tiles, so this is the map, how I represented in the code. So let's see if it actually updates this automatically. I'm gonna have to change it, but if we change this to have a south fence. Ah, yeah, okay. So here's what we're gonna do, just to show how that works. We're going to modify the game to not load the menu, only load the game scene. and hopefully it won't bug out because I have some WebSocket event stuff going on. Let's try this. So we're going to make that bigger again. And then we're going to modify it. So this made it wicked easy when I was, you can see I just popped up a south fence right here. When I was laying everything out, doing it, looking at just a 2D array of attributes is not easy, but when you can actually visualize where you're placing things, it's like we want to put like a power shield right there. Like you can just easily add stuff. So it's really nice. I'm really happy with this kind of design because it makes it super easy to just play around with different designs and stuff. And again, maybe I'll have an editor at some point, but for now this works. I only need one map. The stealth areas, in this case, they have spawn points, so that would be the secondary cell. That would be like right here. I should probably add some grids just to make this easier to see. But yeah, so that's how the tiles work. And again, it has the same kind of bit masking check that you do to see if you end it with a attribute and doesn't equal 0, then it has that attribute. So the actual generation, and I'm going to change this back before I forget. The game itself, we'll just walk through this real quick. Let's start from the beginning, not the game. Let's start from the menu. So the menu is a basic class that extends the scene, has a constructor where it sets up a socket, a group ID, a session ID, as well as an event dispatcher. And the event dispatcher is what's going to be sending messages between, and this is probably not the right design because you shouldn't probably put the logic and the socket stuff in a scene, but maybe I'll break it out to its separate class and then have it shared across them at some point. But for now, the event dispatcher is what's going to be sending messages back and forth between the menu system and that game scene, or the menu scene and the game scene. So on create, the first thing that does is set up the dispatcher saying, okay, listen for any messages that are called game response, because this is going to be coming from the game of the user doing stuff. And then it creates some fonts, which you can see here, makes them interactive so you can click on them. And then on input down, for all of these, basically anything that's interactive that is set as interactive, the menu click will fire this method here. Oop. And then depending on the text, again, this is probably not the right way to do it, but I don't care. This isn't, it's going to be all Unreal once I get to going for real. So yeah, then it basically takes all the click events and then creates the group messages, sends it out. And I'm using a builder pattern here. In Go, I prefer to use functional ops because it just adds a little bit more ease to creating and kind of making things composable. But with like OOP stuff, usually a builder pattern is pretty good. So that would be group message. So the way that group message works is it's basically got the constructor of the group event. It kind of hard codes the group message stuff. And then any method call to it just returns the same object to itself. So it's just adding, if you add the group ID, it just sets that value to this kind of property bag I'm calling data, and then returns the same object instance, and then just does it over and over again until you call serialize, which just stringifies with the type data, and then all that data that was, any of that data that was set here. And the reason that was important is because if you try to send all of the data, my validation routines will get mixed up because it thinks certain fields should be empty. In Go, you have the omit empty fields. And in this case, it was sending them, so the validation was like, well, why are you sending me a player ID for this message that doesn't need it? So by only building up the data that's required, and also just reduces network traffic, then we can reduce those types of issues of sending data we don't need to. So that's the group message. Game message works the same exact way, except for it just sets the game message type. It also does the same thing, so yeah, nothing major there. The event dispatcher is something that's built into Phaser. It's called this event emitter. So I'm just creating an instance of the object and then just exporting it. So it's basically a singleton for this particular case. And then we have that. The WebSocket stuff, I'm using WebSocket TS, which yeah, it seems to work fine. Just create my socket, use a LRU, a least recently used buffer. It's just a ring buffer, I believe. And then with back off, so if it gets disconnected, it will try to reconnect, but then back off for a second, so it's not just hammering if it can't connect. And then it binds a bunch of methods for onMessage, and I had to bind, I hate JavaScript, but I had to bind the this context object so that when I read it, I actually had access to the class itself, otherwise you'll get something else. So yeah, that's pretty much how the messaging works. So when the messages do come in, I first parse it as a network message. The network message is exactly like the Go version where it has the message type and then data. So data could be anything. TypeScript is kind of weird. You can set this like anything. It's kind of like the interface of Go, but yeah. So then you can have that. So then once I figure out the message type, I can then, I don't know if they call it, I guess cast it to the type of message response that I need, and then depending on what it is, dispatch that to the applicable message. So in this case, we have like group message response, which is going to be handling the group created. So this is where it sets the group ID. And then if it's queue successful, creates that thing. And yeah, once it gets a game message, the game load, it gets the session ID, and then it starts that game scene, and then it emits a game message just to make sure everything works. Then we look at the game, and the game was kind of fun to write because I had to figure out, first you have to, well, let me step back here. So when you create a scene from another scene, you can have this init method which will pass the data from it. So in the menu I was calling start the scene with the game message. So I was doing that, and then it just dispatched, it binds the dispatcher to listen for game message events. So then onMessage, I haven't written that yet, but that's how I'll get messages going both ways. So yeah. Now there's this preload method part of Phaser where you can load all your assets. I could have used a sprite sheet here, but this is, again, I don't care about this, so I'm just, each one of these assets I wrote in, I created with Photopea, which, if you look at or is it open? I mean, it's just stupid squares. And if you're not familiar with Photopea, you really should be. It is an amazing, mostly free online editor, which is almost exactly like Photoshop. It's like crazy. Yeah, let's just create a new project. I mean, it's insane that this is for free. So yeah, take a look at that if you're interested. Anyways, back to the preload. So loads all my stuff. The fence one was also interesting. I mean, at least for me. If you're a proper game designer, you're probably like, this is nothing. But so I load the fence image, and then I basically have to rotate it depending on the type of fence it is. So what I do for the create method is, this is when the scene is actually created. It iterates over the level's rows and the columns. It sets the X and Y columns, tiles, basically. And then depending on the attributes, so if we go to this image, which is up here, so if the tile has the type of wall, then return wall, and it will load the wall image. Pretty basic. And it goes through each one of those. These are mutually exclusive, which means you can only have one or the other, or nothing. And then the attributes is where I had to actually generate or modify the image rotation. So I guess you use, I didn't know this, but it's like Phaser uses a right-hand clockwise rotation system where 0 is right and pi divided by 2 is down, plus minus pi is left, and minus pi divided by 2 is up. So I basically just had to figure out which one of these I had to do, and then just did it for rotating the fence to be either south-facing or north-facing. And the way that, reason that matters is because you can have it on the south side or the bottom of the top of the tile in particular. And then I did the same thing for the power-ups, whether it's energy, health, shield, etc. And might, I guess, or strength, or whatever you want to call it. And then once that's created, I basically say, okay, game response, tell the server that I have loaded my game. My game is ready to go. Basically, you can start the timer. So that goes back to the server. So looking at the server code now, we have I made some changes, and probably the biggest one is I got rid of another Go routine. Or I didn't get rid of it, but I'm handling it better. And the reason for that is in the matchmaker, which is here. This check queue that ticks every 500 milliseconds right now, which is called from the when the object's created. So every 500 milliseconds we tick, and this is touching the match game object only, really. Everything else it's touching is read only, so it's not that big of a deal. But before, it was going to call the session manager, and the session manager would then kick off kick off a new game world with those players, which means there would be basically a leakage of Go routine access. So let me open up Paint real quick. So if we had, let's look at all the components here. We have the server, which is in, let's call it Go routine 1, and that's inside of the listen. Actually, yeah, let's just call it 1. So this is the listen event. This is the major, wow, I'm so good at this. This is the loop for basically right here. So we're listening for any server event that comes in. So client connected, clients disconnected, things like that that are necessary for us to process and not have to worry about state being touched by different Go routines. And if you're wondering why I'm so concerned about concurrent access to stuff, it's because I've worked with a system that requires heavy concurrency, and it does your head in trying to keep track of all the stuff that it's touching and where race conditions are. So I'm trying to reduce that as much as possible. So yeah, so this is in a Go routine where it's basically handling everything now, including creating events or creating matches. So I'll get to the reason for that in a second. Anyways, back to this. So we had that. We have the clients. So each one of the clients, they have a Go routine, 2, 3, and so forth, onto listening for their network loop. So in the clients, we have this network loop. So this one's also just reading from the network and then creating that, using that same server channel again. So we don't have to worry about any concurrent access issues there. And then we had the matchmaker. So then the MM had its Go routine, which was going to start off sessions and worlds and whatnot. And that would be bad because it needs to access all of the clients and all of the groups. The groups don't have anything, but don't have any Go routines, but it would have to access the groups, which could be accessed by the server because messages are coming in, same with that. So then you're going to have tons of just locks and all these other mutex things that you'll have to do to make sure none of that touches the same data. So what I did is the matchmaker, just like the client, only sends the message to listen. Matchmaker only sends to listen. And now everything is synchronized inside of that listen Go routine, and it can touch every single thing that it needs to without having to worry about any sort of race conditions, which is awesome. But I'm a little worried I'm putting so much into a single Go routine, which means a single thread, which means a single processor. So I won't really be taking advantage. I mean, I kind of will be because I have to process network events and stuff, but depending on the load of that single Go routine, this might come back to bite me. But I mean, I'm looking at some of the, if we look at, or is it state manager? No, server. Like if we see start is equal to time.now. Let's see how long it takes to actually create a new game session after a match is created. So if we do log.printf, game start took s, and then we do time.since start. This will tell us, this will tell us how long it takes for this create game session, which is going to go through creating the session, doing begin play, sending off the messages to all the players on the team or whatever. So we just had our 2 clients connect. So we're going to, this one might be bunk, so I'm going to reconnect that guy. Create group, character 1, character 3, enter queue, create group, character 2, character 3, enter queue. So that took 253.7 microseconds. So like 0.2 milliseconds. So I don't think I need to worry about this. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I think creating match events and having this go routine manage all that stuff will be enough. So what's going to happen now, and what I need to basically tick every single one of the worlds, and that might take some time. So what I'm going to have to do here is have a new ticker, and I don't think it needs to tick that often. Maybe let's see, game world ticker. New ticker. Let's say time dot millisecond times 250, I guess. And we are going to listen for that here as time session. What the heck did I just call that thing? Game world ticker. Game, and it's not game world ticker C. So this is going to call the session manager. And again, this is all happening in the same go routine, so I don't have to worry about concurrent access issues. And I can just call tick. And that should be it. And now all my game worlds should run. And if they have any timers, I can fire those off. And I should be good. So here I'll need to, so before this game sessions thing, I had locks everywhere and I had to worry about all the mutex garbage, but now I can just iterate through each of the worlds, which I can do like for game sessions, and then just session dot, range. I might have that range. Session dot tick, which, world tick, whatever. I'll probably put it into session because session handles more logic. Anyways, so that's pretty much how I'm going to handle the worlds. So handling processing messages is easy, I guess, because that will be sent out over the client's send message and it won't block. So I don't have to worry about like one client blocking everything because it uses netpool from the GobWAS project or library that I'm using. So yeah, I think we're good there. I don't know if that's actually going to work. This tick, because I don't think I actually implemented it yet, but whatever. So we have our world set up. Let's take a look at how sessions are created. And to do that, where is my level? So my level is exactly the same. I just copied it over from the client side after I got everything working. What it does is it is a new structure, not a pointer to a structure, it just returns the one instance of it. And it's going to generate the spawn points. So it basically iterates over and finds these spawn points because we need to use those later, and it doesn't make sense to have to iterate over it every single time that we spawn a world. It should just have them set on instantiation. So in this case, it's going to take the team ID, and then the player ID, and I'll put them in that slot. And the way that it generates it is from this. So we create two sets of 2D array again, one for each team. So this will be team 1, this will be team 2. We do a little bit of optimization so we don't have to worry. Like, it's always going to be in the first column, or it's always going to be in the last column. So we only have to iterate over those two. And then we basically just say, for each one that has a spawn point, just add it to this array or slice. And then that's it. And then spawn points are all set. Then we have get map, just returns the tiles, spawn points. So yeah, that works for the world. The world I moved to its own package for now. We'll see how that goes, but it just made things kind of a little bit easier for me to see. There is a world interface in the game package that's accessible to everybody. Yeah, so begin play. So the session manager, if we go back to session manager, sorry, I'm jumping around here. The session manager, when it starts, it first does this create game session. So it determines the type, if it's a 3v3 or a 1v1, adds the session ID to a map, and then just calls begin play. And begin play, depending on the session type, let's just look at 1v1 here. And we go to begin play, calls world begin play. And world begin play doesn't go to the right one. Go to this one. World begin play gets the game start data and then broadcasts to each of the teams that data. So we have spawn points for the players and then the team data. So which characters were selected. Again, this is where it's leaking team 1's spawn information and team 2. So I should have basically 2 different messages, or I could probably just generate all of it and then just delete the particular spawn data, or return 2 different versions of it. But that's for a later date. I don't really care right now. So yeah, it calculates it gets the teams, how many slots there are. Right now it's just 3. Iterates over each of the characters and then basically plops them into a spawn point depending on their team ID and their player slot ID. And then yeah, that's easy enough for that one. And then, yep, spawn data is all set. And then the team data, well, it just says the team ID, player ID, and character IDs for each one of those player slots, and the same thing for team 2. And then I just create a game load message, and I fire that off, which is what you saw in the console. It should still be there, yep. And this is basically what the client sees. They see the events. That shouldn't be in there. I don't know why that follow. Oh, I never did an omit empty. Yeah. So this is the character IDs, this is their spawn cell X value, and then their spawn cell Y, so that would be like 7 or whatever. So yeah. Although now that I'm looking at this, looks like both teams have the same X value, which is not right, so I don't know what's going on with there. I'll fix that later. But yeah. So far I'm pretty happy. Again, no movement yet. I'm still kind of figuring out how I want to queue up movement data. I was thinking of, let's think about the movement data here for a second. So we have the 1v1 session, the game starts, they send the message. Oh, this is another thing I didn't cover. The state. I think that's in the state, yeah. Anyways, when the game starts and the client sends over their game loaded response, we have this, I've built this kind of state manager that is going to track every state of the game. So it's going to have all the hit point information, all the used abilities, all the movement of positions, so I can confirm, like if a player saying I can move from here to here, that it's actually valid. So all the heavy lifting is basically going to be done by this state manager. And one thing that they have to do is have this kind of like acknowledgement struct or map, which is basically for if you have 3 users. I'm going to open Paint again. Or let's just have the 2v2 or the 1v1 set up. So, and then here's the session here. So if this is client 1, this is client 2, once they load, they need to say, okay, I'm ready. And then this one needs to say, okay, I'm ready as well. Once I get both confirmations, then it can move to the next state. So I need to keep track of those types of messages that come in. But then I don't want to have different like structures or data types for all these. It's just going to be an unacknowledged buffer, and each state is just going to reset it. So once the state changes, I'll just clear out that, I just clear out that particular struct. Or no, this is me setting it. Sorry, this is updating it. Acknowledge. So yeah, once they're acknowledged, then I delete it, their particular player ID from my map, and then once it's 0, then we're ready to move to the next state. So yeah, the state is going to be super important. There's going to be a lot of data in here. I'm still trying to think about how to handle clients. One idea I had was that the clients would buffer up their actions internally and then send off, or once the timer, their local timer ran out, it would basically merge all their actions that they had to do and then send that off to the server. The opposite way of doing it is every time a client does an action, like, oh, they want to move to this cell, they want to attack this cell, they want to dash to this cell, it would fire off all of them. I think it would be better to batch them. And the reason, I mean, there's many reasons. One, it's easier to process, but the downsides of batching is that the chance that a client disconnects and nothing gets sent, and then, you know, you lose a turn. Let's say they disconnect and then they reconnect and then they wasted their turn because it never sent the data, which would be kind of frustrating as a player. So there's definitely a trade-off there. I don't know which one I'm going to do. Yeah, I might, you know what, I'm not going to do batching because I like handling disconnects cleanly. So I am not going to do that. And I don't think I need, I mean, it's kind of silly, but I might just do just in the beginning, I'm going to have a move buffer, and then for, it needs to be, it's kind of lame. I don't want to make two, but I'm thinking I might need to have two for, you know, I could make a new buffer class, which is totally what I'm going to do. New, let's put action buffer. So, purpose of this is going to type action buffer struct. It is going to be, I wonder if I could just do a ring buffer of like 1. That way every time they send a message it would just overwrite the next one and I wouldn't have to worry about it. Yeah, that might make sense. Include that. So yeah, if it's a ring buffer, we're not going to have an action buffer. We're going to have a move buffer, and we're going to have a attack buffer. There might be a better way to do this. I'm just kind of riffing off the top of my head here. I'll probably come back to this, but yeah, should I have like a team 1 buffer and a team 2 buffer? It's kind of janky. It's like really janky. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do, yeah. I'm gonna have 2, but I'm gonna kind of hide it from the state. So I'm gonna have an action buffer, and then I'm gonna have a action manager. Action manager. I hate manager. It's a dumb name, but package state func type action manager. Which I can probably not export these, but whatever. Right. So I'm gonna have team 1 buffer is equal to an action buffer. Team 2 buffer, action buffer, new action manager, and that is going to return an action manager. So the purpose of this is to hide the complexity, because then I can do like func action manager. That's weird. Action manager. I was practicing. I haven't finished this. Then I can do add action. I can do team ID in it, and then whatever. There might be a better way of doing it. I could do a map of them actually, but I have too many maps as it is. Probably just a single struct would be better. So team ID, and then whatever the action is. And I can pop them off. Or, yeah, I mean, this could just easily be a slice as well, but so we're going to want to have like add actions to each of these. Make a new one. New buffer. So this is where it's kind of weird, where I'm going to have just like a ring buffer of 1. Like this might not be worth it. A ring is an element of a circular list. A rings do not have a beginning or end. Well, let's think. can you have multiple actions per turn? No. You can only do one move, one attack, and one dash. I mean, you have a move, an attack, and a dash all within the same round, but you only need to have that. So I don't have the concept of actions yet. Interface action, interface. So we'll just set that to this for now. And then I'll have like a add move, and then action interface. Actually, just add and then type. Action type. Just keep it with. So this will give me the flexibility to just oh wait, no, I do need to be a map because I need to do it per character ID, right? Right? Or I could have it in the manager do it. Because it's going to create a team1 buffer is equal to a new action buffer and then team2 buffer. So they're going to have their buffers for actions, and then depending on the team, choose the right one. In fact, I could probably simplify this and just make it a slice or an array of 2, but whatever. Yeah. Okay. And then action. I almost want to call this handler because it's handling. Well, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to do yet because I literally did not think about this until right now. So, and I have a feeling I'm going to need like a location manager too to keep track of everything, because I need to know all the characters and teams. Basically, there's a lot of team. The separation of team stuff makes it really hard. But it's also good. That means it's totally separated, which means if I put all these things into different collections, I can go ahead and just serialize them and then send off the state, or I can kind of do a union or some set stuff against them to see who can see who, and yeah, do some calculations that way. Yeah, that's going to be kind of interesting to see how this plays out. So I don't want this yet. Let's go back to the ticking stuff. Well, no. Yeah. Character IDs, player IDs. Update state. So one thing I want to kind of test to see if that world tick works the way I expect it to before I start worrying about actually handling stuff. I need to make sure this all works. So inside of the... Why is this red? Oh, yeah, I don't need that anymore. The 1v1 session, it acknowledges everybody, and then it's going to call update state with game started. And at this point, it needs to start a timer. So if we have a timer, should we just have a global timer? Or just, yeah, session timer. I'll start a session, so just timer. Timer. I think I want to make this pointer. I know that. I know it's not used. So this is going to, actually, I wonder if I should probably do this. All state updates should probably happen in here. And this one is checking for game loading, game deciding. What am I doing here? Update state. Oh, this is resetting it to being empty, or setting it to being. Wait, what? If the current state is the game loading state or it is game deciding, then iterate over all the player IDs and set it to unacknowledged. Right, because then I delete it. It's the opposite way, where it has the data and then it's removed. So that's fine. And then I should probably just return, because because I'm going to do some other calculations here. If n the current state is equal to, maybe we'll do a switch. Go to the switch. Current state. Oh, no, I don't want to return here because I still need to process stuff. Because if it's game deciding and then I just return, it won't actually start the timer. So for game loading, I think I can return because that should only happen once. Case game loaded. So we can just return. If it is game deciding, or just game deciding, I think it's game loaded is, no, jeez, game deciding. Hold on, what does it do? Who calls acknowledge? Or what state was I setting that? It was coming from the session manager? No, session, where was I? I'm so confused. Who's calling you? Who is calling you? Why does my references not work? That's crazy. There it was. Right. It was called from 1v1 session. So game loaded, now it's called game started. Okay, so game started, we need to start a timer. Game started. Game started. Time ticker. Nope. What was it called? Oh, I didn't put it there. Where was I putting it? Oh, this is manager. Right, so that's going to need, not in the session. Gosh. I feel like the state manager should not be concerned with timers. And it should not. That should definitely be a session logic. That'd be really weird. So I guess I do have to... You know, this should come from the tick. Is there no tick? There is no tick. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. It's going to update the state. I'm going to have the tick method look at the state and then decide what it needs to do, which makes way more sense. So we're going to add to the session a tick. And then our 1v1 session needs a tick. And so does our 3v3. So that's all there. We now have game started. No, I don't want to do this here. This is a bad idea. 1v1. Tick. Boop. And that actually needs to come from a state. So that'll give me the current state. And this is, what the heck is that? What is going on here? What is it saying? Oh, it must be just a messed up. Oh, it's just this. Okay. Cool. So, if I remember correctly, we're calling world tick and not session tick from the session manager, which is not a good idea. So it's should just go to session tick. So it's going to kind of traverse down from the server ticks, the session manager ticks, the sessions tick, and then maybe if I need it, the world's tick, but I think the session's going to handle everything. So session 1v1 session, yep. So that calls tick. And then if the game is started, which means that all players have acknowledged, they've loaded the map, they're ready to go, we need to create a new timer, or we need to reset the timer if there is one set. Actually, so I do need to create it first. So I don't like how I broke out all of these. Makes it hard to follow what's being initialized and where. But anyways, so timer is equal to time new timer. Oh, weird. I can't just have like a empty timer. Yeah, I can. Yeah, what am I doing? I don't have to worry about that. We're just gonna set it here. A.timer is equal to new timer. And I think this should probably come from like a configuration file so I can play with it dynamically without having to recompile stuff, but I don't care. Let's just give it 30 seconds. Why is that doing that? Time.second times 30. Alright, you know what? I'll make this a variable. Game decision. Oof. That is not how you spell game decision. Game decision is equal to 30 seconds. So we have that timer. And I think I need to send a new message to all the clients saying, yo, timer started, you better start thinking of your moves here. Which I do. I totally need to do that. So start the time. Actually, you know what? I have a world sequence diagram. This is why I do these things, because I forget. Nope. B. There we go. So, I think the bigger you make this, yeah, it gets bigger. Nice. Also, we don't need this one as much. So, group 1 starts. What do we have working so far? We have the start game working. We have the begin play working. We have the start with level and group states. We're good. We have the game loaded ready message. We're now at this point of starting 30-second timers. So I do send a message saying timer started, and that's when I can start reading in actions. So we are making good progress there. Cool. Right, so what kind of message do I send here? And do I send it here? Trying to figure out where's a good place to send messages from. I mean, I can technically do it from anywhere, but yeah, for now, I'll just do it here. A.t groups group run broadcast message. It's going to be a new game timer. Is that right? Yeah, whatever. And then I don't want to send a duration. I mean, I'm going to hard code it on both sides, so I'm not going to send anything. It's just going to be like an empty one value. I need to send it to the other one too. Group 2. So new game timer. Oh, come on. Just bring me to the baggage, man. Bring me to the baggage. Game message. Right. So game start, these are game events. So game, probably timer started. Oh, I had round start. Oh. Yeah. Game round start. Let's go that. Passed me, made a good choice. New game, round start message. That should be all I need to send, right? Why does it keep bringing me back here? Game message. Copy all this garbage. Oh, it does need the session ID. Right. And level ID doesn't need spawn data, team data, doesn't need any of that stuff. It's going to be pretty much an empty message. Wait, does it need the... It's good for him to send the session with it anyways. And game round start. And this is new round start. Oof, wow, it's already 10:20. 10 more minutes. What else can we do here? Get the rounded start. I wish we could do something cooler for visual stuff, but it is what it is. So new round start. What will be cool is to get the ticker working, or the timer working on the client side too, so it sees that message. And then, actually, we should be able to see this now. Game loaded, game started. As long as that state's being set properly, it should work. Let's try it, see what happens. Or, you know, that. Not enough arguments. Right, session ID. Session ID. A.ID. How about now? Nice. They're already connected. I'll reboot them though. Great group, character 1, character 2, character 3, enter key. Great group, character 1, character 2, character 3. I should see a game loaded. Why did that? First off, why are these? Oh, I know why. I didn't omit empty. Go away, go away, go away. Go away, go away, go away. Oh, it's not because they're empty, it's because they are not pointers. That's why. Why did I do that? I think it was just power up and, yeah, power up and follow. Yeah, cool. Okay. So I don't actually want to empty those, because they will be necessary when those messages come in. So those are all pointers. Shouldn't get that anymore. Let's go back. Reboot. Boop. It seems to be sending me one for each character. No, it's sending me a bunch. What the heck? 9, right? Event type 9. Game loaded act response. Why was it sending me all those messages? Because I'm doing it in a tick. But why is it not continuing to send me? It is continuing to send me. Shit. Okay. Don't want to do that there. Yep, stop. Actually, how fast is it sending them? Oh, I guess it's every 100 milliseconds or whatever. Okay, so game started, broadcast the round start, and I need to immediately... Ooh, dang. No, it shouldn't be called again until that return. So, round starts, and then I'll need to send a new message, or change the state to probably round. No, it should be game deciding, because that way it should only send it to me once. Let's make sure. Yeah, let's do this again. Reboot. Nope, it's still blasting me. I guess I never set the state. State set update state game.game deciding. Now it should stop messing me up. Thank you. One message. That's all I wanted. Cool. So, I mean, made a little progress today. Got an extra state added in, which is always good. And now I can kind of figure out, hopefully, I think my next schedule is on Wednesday. I should hopefully, as long as this cold goes away, have the ability to buffer up the actions and maybe get movement working. That's what I'm hoping for. So yeah, I think that is going to conclude this stream. Thanks for watching, either now or later. All right.